Hello and welcome. In this video, I will be showing you how to write a few basic formulas in Google Sheets that will allow you to perform some very basic calculations. Now, Google Sheets has a tool called Functions, and this is the function button that you can see right here. And you can see if I click the little arrow next to it, there's a few very common functions at the top. Those are the ones we wind up using most often for school applications. However, there are a number of other formula functions that you can use for a variety of purposes. Okay, we're going to stick to some basic ones. All right, now what I have here is a data table that we built during task 1 of this project. And in task 2, we collected data and completed the data table. Now, we had a weekend and some vacation time in between task 1 and task 2, so you may not have completed filling in your data table. That's okay. I'm going to provide you with a copy of a completed data table so that you can complete task 3. All right. I would still like you to complete task 1 if you didn't already do so. That is something that I'm expecting that you would have completed and submitted by now. Okay, so moving ahead, what are we looking at? All right, we have 7 days of data, so we have our dates, we have time, we have the current temperature, relative humidity, rain, the barometer reading, right? How high up the mercury in the barometer rises. So again, when there's higher pressure, the barometer rises higher because there's more air pushing down on the mercury in the barometer. And when there's lower pressure, there's air rising off the surface, therefore allowing the barometer reading to get lower. Or we have our bar trend, which just tells us if our barometer has been rising steadily throughout the day or falling throughout the day. And then we have a description of the cloud cover during that day. And you can see during this week, we've had a lot of clear weather, which is really nice. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some quantitative data. Okay, that's data that uses numbers, if you recall from your science class. And we're going to try to make sense of some of this data. So when we're looking at writing a formula, we want to think about what kind of data we want to analyze. Okay, so if we were going to analyze temperature, it wouldn't make sense for us to write a formula that would find the total temperature, but the average temperature over the course of this week would be appropriate. And I'm going to show you how to write a formula for average temperature. We'll also show you how to write a formula that will calculate the average relative humidity. And I will show you how to write a formula that will show how to find the total rain for the week, which you could see here is a pretty simple calculation you could do in your head, but I would like to show you that formula anyway. We could also look at the average barometer reading throughout the course of the week. Okay, so basically we're looking at 2 formulas, average and total. All right, now to get started, I want to take my sheet 1 down here, right? That's what this data table was built on, and I want to rename it so you can follow these instructions as I give them throughout the video. Remember, you can pause this video at any time and make a few changes in your own spreadsheet copy, and then you can unpause the video to move forward, right? Okay, so here we go. We're going to click the little arrow, and we're going to rename sheet 1. We're going to call this data table 1. Okay, now if we didn't already do that in a previous video, that's something that I'm showing you again here. I think I may have showed that in a previous video. All right, but you can rename your sheets. Okay, the other thing we want to do is we're going to need to have another sheet with the same data table where we can make some changes to it. Okay, so what we're going to do is instead of adding a sheet and having to remake the table, if you click that little arrow, you can duplicate the sheet. So we're going to duplicate the sheet. And you can see down here it puts another one called copy of data table 1. All right, we're going to change that in a little bit. Now, I'm going to click on the arrow, all right, and we're going to rename this, and we're going to call this data analysis table. Okay, and we're going to now just take a look at a few things. All right, so first of all, let's get rid of, I want to show you how you can get rid of information that you don't need. So we're going to get rid of the bar trend and the cloud cover, and we can do that all at once. If you click on column G and drag across to column H, okay, so you're clicking on the actual letters because that highlights the entire column all the way down. Okay, then you can click the little arrow next to the G or the H. It doesn't matter. Either one is fine. And you're going to find where it says delete columns G and H, and you can delete those two columns. Okay. And even though we don't need the date and the time, we're going to leave those two in for now. All right, so now we're going to get started on writing a formula. So the first thing we want to do, let's see, current temperature. We can start with the average temperature and the average relative humidity. So up in the top here, we're going to add a couple of new columns so that we kind of have a new table here that we're building from this table. And so we're going to have average temperature. Okay, and again, if you hold your control button down and then you push your enter button, that will put your cursor in the same cell, but underneath that title there, average temperature, and here's where we can put in, again, our units. Okay, so some of the skills you're learning here are a repeat of some previous skills. Now, if you remember, this cell here is a little bit too narrow, so what we're going to do is just stretch that out a little bit. You could actually click between the H and the I, and you can double click and it will make it that column as wide as it needs to be. If you want to make it a little bit wider, you can just hover your cursor between the H and the I and stretch it a little bit. Okay, we're also going to want to have the average relative humidity. Okay, and again, you can see how that text is too wide for that column, so you can stretch it. If you also recall, there was something else we did. We clicked on an entire column here. We can do this in the entire column. And there's something called wrap text. Okay, so this is your text wrapping button right here, and you can click the little arrow and you can select the wrap. Right, so you can see how the difference between stretching a column out versus wrapping the text. Okay, whoops. All right. Also, I didn't put the unit underneath, so if I double click in that cell and I hold my control button and push the enter, it will wrap that around, and I can put percentage in there. All right, so moving ahead. Okay, and we can also then add total rain. And again, hold the cursor, press enter, and that's going to be in inches. And the average barometer. And that's going to be control enter. We'll put that in inches of mercury, which is Hg is the chemical symbol for. Okay, and again, we can wrap the text in there by clicking on the K and selecting the text wrapping. Okay, now we're going to just click and drag across. So click in H3, drag across to K3, and then down. So we're going to click again in H3 across to K3 and then down. So we're going to have another little table here. And if you recall from the earlier videos, we have our borders. We want to put those on. Okay, you can add some fill color in here with the paint bucket. Then I'm going to pick a different color than the other table. And I want to also, while that text is highlighted, I do want to boldface it all. Okay, so now let's show you how to write those formulas. So to find the average temperature, okay, if you remember average from your math class, right, you would add up all of the temperatures for the week and then divide by the number of temperatures that you added up. So we have 7 days worth of data. So we're going to add up each of these numbers, find the total, and then divide by 7. Now, you could do that on paper. Maybe you could do it in your head. I certainly can't. You could use a calculator, or you could use this great tool in Google Sheets called functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to click inside the cell H4. Okay, this is where we're going to write our formula, and this is where your answer will also wind up. We're going to click this little function tool here, and they give you an average. And so this is a great tool for finding average. You could do this a couple of other ways. You could use the sum function, add it all up, divide by 7, but average will do the dividing for you. So when I click that, it starts my formula. So the way formulas are written in Google Sheets, you would start with an equals symbol. You would type in the name of the formula that you want to use, and then you would reference all the cells that you want to include in the formula. Okay, now this is kind of like basic algebra, so this is good for you to understand. All right, so we don't have to actually type in the formula because we have a formula tool that allows us to pick the function that we want instead of having to type it in. Okay, so now in the parentheses, though, we have to cell reference, right? We have to reference all of the cells that we want to add up and divide by 7. So if I click in between the parentheses, I can then reference my cells by clicking in the first cell, C4, and dragging all the way down to C10. Or I could type in C4 colon C10. Okay, so the way the formula works is the equal sign lets Google Sheets know that you actually want to perform a calculation. If I didn't have the equal sign in there, everything would wind up as text. Average is the name of the formula that I'm using. It tells the computer that I'm going to add up all of the cells that I reference right here, and then I'm going to divide by however many cells I reference. And in this case, C4 is the first cell that I wanted to reference. C10 is the last one I want to reference. And I want to also reference all of those cells in between. So basically, I want to add up all of the cells, all of the numbers that are in these cells, and then it will divide by that many, which is 7 in this case because we collected data for 7 days. Okay, now if I click outside of my parenthesis, I don't even think I had to click outside of it, but I'm going to, and then hit enter, I will get my number. Okay, now you're going to see the average temperature has a lot of decimal places, possibly. You can change that also. So I'm going to show you how to change that. You come up here to the format tool. You come down here to format number. Okay, we're using temperature, so temperature can just be the number one, right? If we were using currency or something else, right? Date, sometimes you want to format your date numbers. But we're just going to stick to the one that says number here. And it will automatically adjust that to 2 decimal places. If I want to add or remove decimal places, I can decrease them by clicking right here, and that will decrease to 1 decimal place. This would add decimal places. The more I click, the more I add. Okay, the more I click here, the more I take away. All right, so why don't you leave that at 2 decimal places? Okay, and then let's try the same thing for average relative humidity. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video and try what I just showed you, or you can continue to watch the video and I will repeat those steps. Okay, so if you want to see me repeat those steps now, relative humidity. Okay, this time I'm going to try typing in the formula for you. Equals average, open parenthesis, and I want to reference the cells. So the first cell is D4, colon, because it's going to, remember, take all of the cells that I'm referencing between D4 and then D10. And then I hit enter. Okay, and I come up with the average relative humidity this week was 44.71428571. Much too long, so I'm going to decrease my decimals to just 1 decimal place. Okay, now let's skip total rain for a second, and why don't you go ahead and try average barometer. Pause the video and go ahead and try those steps yourself. You can either use the function command or you can try typing it in yourself. And now I'm going to show you how to get the average barometer reading. So again, I can come up here, grab that average function, or I could type in equals average, open parentheses. I'm going to reference my cells, and I can either click and drag down on them, or I can type them in. So in this case, it's F4 to F10, enter, and the average is 30.21, so I'm going to decrease the decimal places here. Whoops, to 1 decimal place. Okay, and then let's wrap this up with total rain. Now, if you notice, these 3 calculations were to find the average. This time we're going to find the total rain in inches. Now, I know that you can very quickly look at this and just put in the number 0. Okay. However, I'd still like you to use a formula. For one, it's extra practice, but 2, if I made a mistake in grabbing my data here, this having a formula in here ahead of time can help you. So I'm going to show you that. And if you think about which formula here we're going to use, okay, we're not going to use average this time. We're going to use the one called sum. So equals sum, and I'm taking E4 all the way down, and I can highlight these like that to E10, or I could have typed that in and hit enter. Whoops, I think I missed something. Put it in the wrong place. Let's do that one more time. Function sum, E4 to E10, hit enter, and you'll see the total is 0. Now I just want to show you, let's just pretend for a minute that maybe on this first day it wasn't, we didn't have 0 inches of rain. Maybe we had 2. Okay, you'll notice as I adjust my number here in the table and I hit enter, my total rain is adjusted here. Okay, and if the next day I had 4 inches of rain, my total should now say 6. Okay, because 4 plus 2 equals 6. All right, so using the formulas is helpful. Let me just take those back out. All right, and so that's basic formula writing. In the next video, in the next task, we'll show you how to create a graph from this data. All right, hope that's helpful. If you missed something, you can go back. I do want to just show you one last thing. I want to show you what happens if I write a formula incorrectly. Like instead of having this colon in there, let's just put a space in there and show you what happens. I'm going to get this error symbol. Okay, so that tells you that you wrote your error incorrectly. So if you do that, you can just double click in there and you can see if you can figure out what you did wrong, or you can just delete it and you can then just put the formula, you can just start from scratch again and just redo a formula. Okay, so I just wanted you to see that. So if you do get that error, that tells you that you did something wrong in the formula and the computer knows that, and you can go ahead and try to adjust your formula. All right, I hope that's helpful. Looking forward to seeing your completed work. Have a great day.